Welcome back to Live, Work, Stay with Billy Kay. Today's segment, we're going to be talking again with Chairman of the County Capital Sales Tax Commission, Mike Sutton. We have a tax on the ballot. I think it's important, whether you like taxes or not, to at least understand what the county and the municipalities are trying to do. Today I have with me again Mike Sutton. Today I have with me again Mike Sutton, who is the chairman of the Beaufort County Capital Sales Tax Commission. In our last segment, we talked a little bit of generalities, but I thought today what we'd do is get down into the nitty-gritty. You know, what are we asking the voters to pay that extra penny for? You know, Mike had, in summary, had said that we had sort of 4 categories. But I think we ought to dig right into the 4 categories and at least highlight some of the projects. Whether you're going to vote for this or not, whether you have no idea, the likelihood is that very few people have an understanding of what this is about.
Sure.
And so I'm dedicating the time on this show, thanks to Mike's help, to try to at least let people understand what the option they'll be voting on would be. Mike, let's hit it with the projects.
Great. Well, thanks, Billy, for having me back. Obviously important to get word out of what's going on here. As you mentioned, we have several categories that the Commission put together for the $120 million worth of 4-year funding with the penny sales tax. In the category 1 was we spoke about on the last episode was related to public safety, and those are very specific items on transportation and on public access, which were the safe routes to schools. We talked about that a little bit. Some of the specifics we'll go over again with the Jenkins Islands and Windmill Harbor area roadway improvements, which is a problem, as most people who live there know, and people who travel to Hilton Head may experience, along with the Pinckney Island Road as well. And this is not new information to the county. The county has had a traffic impact study done, or a traffic safety study done, and all the items on the penny sales tax list that are under the public safety related to transportation or direct results of that study.
And all of these have been on the list. It's just a question of, do you raise taxes, which you really can't do because of the state cap,
right,
and you don't want to do, or do you find that extra short-term way to raise the capital to begin to shorten that long list of capital projects we all need?
Sure. I mean, Hilton Head suffers directly the impact of the Bluffton corridor, the 278 corridor, not being completed or not being finished. The state transportation tax, the gas tax, is not sufficient enough to fund projects like this. So the county struggled for years of how do you do these segments, these pieces, and the ones that we have on the list are the final components that make up things like traffic signal devices that make the neighborhood safer, road widening projects where there's 4 lanes now and 6 lanes leading into it and 6 lanes leading out of it. But there's entire areas that are narrowed down and it causes bottlenecking. And even things like the Pinckney Island, if you've been there, it's the preserve area where a lot of outdoor people like to do recreation. And it's a very unsafe environment because the boaters have to pull their boats up out onto 278 at the foot of the bridge. And there's some improvements that the traffic safety study indicated that could make that a much safer approach and entry and exit point. If the penny sales tax is passed, we can see as a community, larger community, almost everything we believe needs to be done on 278 all the way to Hilton Head, except the widening of the bridge. That'd be the last component, and that's a big number, and that's something that has to be studied in the future. But if this penny sales tax passed, it has huge impact on public safety as far as the roadway infrastructure. In addition to that, there's side connectors and there's little pieces of sidewalks and trails. And I think that, in my mind, when I sat on the commission, the connectors were a huge part. You can't do one without the other. So we can pave surfaces and make roads, but we have to have safe ways to get to those and get off of those.
And that's not just for the people who live on Hilton Head Island. That's the people who work there, the people who visit there, the people who live in Bluffton who shop or work there.
That's right.
It's the whole region. So we always tend to think, well, this is for Beaufort, that's for Hilton Head. But I think y'all have made a broad selection. I mean, I think one, for example, that will impact every single citizen in Beaufort County is the sheriff's request for new radios that will serve not only the sheriff's deputies, but the Bluffton, Beaufort, Port Royal Police
Sure. I mean, we talked about that last episode as well, but that is hugely important because you got to remember when the 911 call goes out, It doesn't matter where you live in the county. There's multiple type agencies that will respond at different levels and different responsibilities and just different jurisdictions. And prior to the issue we have the radios today, each municipality or township had their own gear, and there was not a direct connection between those communication pieces. And so
that's probably fire too.
That's fire, police, and EMS, and emergency management. So the problem we're facing is that now that under Sheriff Tanner's time period, he was able to get that controlled and actually spend money back 15 years ago to synchronize all that. We're at the end of that life cycle. Somebody has to pay, and we have an opportunity to allow 40% of the visitor component who actually are a large user of those services driving through our region. We're allowing them to help us pay for the communication gear. If we don't pass the penny sales tax, that will still occur. The difference is that each municipality or township will have to find a funding stream to upgrade radios. And my biggest fear is if we go back to the system we had years ago, where everybody had their own responsibility to deal with communications, we'll go back to that same point where if they don't mesh, there'll be some glitch in the system. We really need our sheriff to manage communication through the EOC here in Beaufort, the Emergency Operations Center. We should not go back in time, and we have a chance to fund it with penny sales tax dollars that have a smaller impact on our wallets than just the contributing citizens with real estate taxes.
You know, you said the 60% or the 40%. A lot of people don't think about that. When we pay an extra penny, when we pay an extra 0.6 of a penny, someone else is paying for.
That's right.
And meaning for every dollar we spend, 40% or 40 cents is coming from someone who's a visitor or a traveler or someone who lives outside the county who's coming into it. That's a huge opportunity, because almost half of the money for this comes for people who don't live here, but who do use the services.
Right, and it's a chance to do it in a short time period. You know, if you don't narrow this down to like the 4-year window that we have, then some of these funding streams will take much longer to fund, and they could last many more years just to try to deal with that.
So a total of 120 million. Let's go to the second category.
All right, the second category is environmental impact. Now this is a huge one because we always, if you have water and sewer to your house and you're not impacting the environment because you're not on a septic tank, you know, you kind of take it for granted everybody has it. Well, the reality is our larger community, not everyone has water and sewer. This list includes improvements to water quality and sewer distribution on areas that are still on septic tanks. And it has over probably 125 parcels in the Bluffton-Hilton Head area that could come back and get into the system and be put on Beaufort-Jasper Water Sewer Authority's system. That's a big impact to the environment. The other component of that is the stormwater pieces that match into it in some of the areas of the headwaters of the May River. And that's an environmental impact that we've heard about for years. And there's 2 major projects on this list that will help. Actually 3. One will be a restoration of the wetlands at the headwaters of the May River, and the other one is into the marsh areas and the retention areas adjacent to the May River that may be under private development control now, but those systems are not mandated. We can't mandate people to put this stuff in after the fact. And so
Bluffton's been working long and hard on this.
They've been working long hard. You hear it on the news.
And you know, for the rest of them to help them a little bit, because it is an asset of the Low Country, the May River.
Well, and we've had
as are our other rivers, but that's one that's been particularly hit hard.
And if you live here and love this area, you know fully well that the environment is fragile and it's important, and we should be doing everything we can to protect it. And this is one way to do it where everybody shares in the cost. There's not one neighborhood that's in their backyard and they have to deal with it. It's countywide. It doesn't matter if you live in Lebico or you live on Hilton Head. You're sharing in the ability to repair or mend issues that were created years ago when we didn't really understand our impact.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's one of the reasons it's not on this project, but while we have an environmental component on the Boundary Street redevelopment to try to keep the stormwater and the runoff from cars and the oil and what washes off the street into the water. Not in this project, but it's something that it's something new, so to speak, that we're finally beginning again Without this, Bluffton is going to continue to struggle and struggle and struggle. With this kind of help, it will allow them to catch up. So a lot of the capital sales tax is catching up, whether it's from slowing down during the recession, whether it's just being overwhelmed without the kinds of maintenance dollars
Sure.
put aside.
Well, most of us finishing things that we planned and started years ago, knew we had to do, but didn't have a funding stream to do it. And you remember, this is not the first penny sales tax been asked, but truly public safety has been at the forefront. So the last two penny sales taxes were approved were almost entirely related to traffic impact and infrastructure. This time around, we realized we needed to spread it out and catch up on some of the other areas, the environmental and the quality of life issues that also relate, and balance those needs, across the board.
Okay, well, let's take a break. We'll be back in a few minutes with Live, Work, Stay with Billy Kay.